The mining colony on Kethra 7 was not a beautiful place. The sky was always gray, the ground was always cold, and the wind never stopped blowing. But 300 humans called it home, and they had learned to love it in their own way. Megan Cole stood at the window of her small office and watched the workers moving between the mining shafts. She was 34 years old, with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much violence in too few years. Before coming to this distant world, she had served in the military. She had fought in 2 wars and lost friends in both. Now she worked as the security chief for the colony, and she told herself that her fighting days were over. She was wrong about that, but she did not know it yet. The colony was home to more than just humans. 6 different alien species worked in the mines, digging up rare minerals that made faster-than-light travel possible. Most of them were friendly enough. They worked their shifts, collected their pay, and went home to their families on distant worlds. But one species was different. The Vrethkai were hunters. They stood 7 feet tall, with gray skin and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. Their hands ended in claws that could cut through metal, and their teeth were sharp enough to tear flesh from bone. They had evolved on a world where everything was either predator or prey, and they had risen to the top of the food chain. Now they looked at the galaxy the same way they had once looked at their home planet. Everything that was not Vrethkai was beneath them. Their leader on Kethra 7 was a warrior named Threxus. He was bigger than the others, meaner than the others, and he hated humans more than anyone Megan had ever met. He called them soft. He called them weak. He said they were prey animals who had somehow learned to build spaceships, and that one day his people would hunt them to extinction. Megan had learned to ignore him. She had more important things to worry about than the insults of an overgrown lizard with a superiority complex. But she kept her eyes open, as she noticed things that others missed. One evening, she was walking near the eastern mining shafts when she heard something strange. Voices, speaking in the clicking language of the Vrethkai. They were coming from a section of the mine that was supposed to be empty. Megan moved quietly, keeping to the shadows. Her military training had not left her, and she could still move without making a sound when she needed to. She rounded a corner and found herself looking at 5 Vrethkai workers, digging in a tunnel that should have been sealed off weeks ago. They were looking for something. That much was clear from the way they worked, methodical and focused. They were not mining for the same minerals as everyone else. They wanted something specific, something hidden in the rock. Megan stepped out of the shadows. The Vrethkai stopped working and turned to face her. Their yellow eyes gleamed in the dim light. "This section is restricted," Megan said. Her voice was calm and steady. "You need to leave." One of the workers laughed. It was an ugly sound, like rocks grinding together. "Go away, human. This does not concern you. Everything in this colony concerns me. That is my job." A shadow moved behind her. Megan turned and found herself face to face with Threxus. He was even bigger up close, his head nearly touching the ceiling of the tunnel. He looked down at her with contempt. "You should not be here," he said. "Leave now, and I will forget that I saw you. I could say the same to you." Threxus laughed. Then he reached out with one massive hand and shoved her aside. It was not a gentle push. He put his full strength behind it, expecting to send her flying into the wall, expecting to hurt her, expecting her to crawl away like the prey animal he believed her to be. But Megan did not fly into the wall. She did not crawl away. Instead, she caught his wrist. For a moment, everything was still. Threxus stared at her hand wrapped around his arm, confusion spreading across his alien face. He tried to pull free, but her grip was like iron. He tried harder, using the strength that had made him the greatest warrior of his generation. He could not move her. Megan twisted her body, using his own momentum against him. She pulled and turned at the same time, and Threxus found himself flying through the air. He hit the ground hard, the impact driving the breath from his lungs. Before he could recover, Megan was on top of him. Her knee pressed into his throat, and her hand pinned his arm to the stone floor. The other Vrethkai did not move. They stood frozen, their yellow eyes wide with something they had never felt before. It took Megan a moment to recognize the emotion on their alien faces. Thought it was fear. Threxus stared up at her, his mouth opening and closing but no sound coming out. He had been in 100 fights. He had killed warriors twice his size. He had never lost. And now this human, this tiny soft creature, had thrown him to the ground like he was nothing. Megan leaned close. Her voice was quiet, but every word was clear. I said this section is restricted. Do not make me repeat myself again. She stood up and stepped back. Threxus lay on the ground for a long moment, his chest heaving. Then he rose slowly to his feet, his eyes never leaving her face. Something had changed in those yellow eyes. The contempt was gone, replaced by something darker and more dangerous. This is not over, he said. No, Megan agreed. I do not think it is. She turned and walked away, leaving the Vrethkai standing in the tunnel behind her. She could feel their eyes on her back, but she did not look around. She did not need to dodge as she walked back toward the main colony. Megan felt her hands shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. She had not meant to do that. She had spent years learning to control herself, to hold back the strength that came from growing up on a world where everything was trying to kill you. But Threxus had pushed her, and she had reacted on instinct. The galaxy thought humans were weak. They looked at human bodies and saw small creatures with no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. They did not understand that humans had something more dangerous than all of those things combined. Humans had 3 million years of evolution that had turned them into the most persistent, most adaptable, most stubborn predators in the universe. They just did not like to show it, but Megan had shown it tonight. And now everything was going to change. 3 days passed after the meeting. 3 days of tension and whispers and watching. The Vrethkai kept to themselves, staying in their section of the colony and speaking to no one. But Megan knew they were planning something. She could see it in the way Threxus looked at her whenever their paths crossed. His yellow eyes burned with hatred and something else. Something that looked like anticipation. On the 4th day, it happened that Megan was eating breakfast in the cafeteria when the doors opened and Threxus walked in. He was alone, but he moved like he owned the room. Every human in the cafeteria stopped eating and watched as he crossed the floor toward Megan's table. He stopped in front of her and spoke in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I invoke the right of formal challenge. Under the laws of the Galactic Commerce Union, you must answer. Megan set down her fork. What kind of challenge? Combat, no weapons. To the death or until one of us yields. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The location will be the Rim Canyon. It is sacred to my people. A fitting place for you to die. The cafeteria was silent. Everyone knew about the Rim Canyon. It was a massive crack in the planet's surface, so deep that no one had ever found the bottom. The Vrethkai believed that dying there sent your spirit to their warrior afterlife. They considered it an honor to fall into its darkness. Megan considered her options. She could refuse. The Commerce Union allowed that, technically. But refusing a formal challenge would make humanity look weak. Other species would see them as cowards, and the protections they enjoyed under galactic law would start to fade away. The Vrethkai were counting on that. They expected her to back down. She stood up from the table. I accept. Threxus blinked. For just a moment, surprise flickered across his face. Then his smile returned, wider than before. 3 days, he said. Prepare yourself, human. It will be the last thing you ever do." He turned and walked out of the cafeteria. The doors closed behind him, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. Some people were angry. Some were scared. Some were already planning her funeral. Director Webb found her an hour later. He looked older than he had the day before, his face lined with worry. "You should not have accepted," he said. "I had no choice. We could have found another way." Megan shook her head. "No, this was always going to happen. Threxus was never going to let me live after what I did to him in that tunnel. The challenge just makes it official." She spent the next 3 days preparing. Kevin helped her set up communication equipment so that the entire colony could watch the fight. Patricia studied the geology of the Rim Canyon, mapping out where the ground was stable and where it was dangerous. Other humans from the colony came to offer what help they could. Some gave combat advice. Others simply wished her luck. On the second night, Megan made a video call to her mother. The signal had to travel across half the galaxy, and there was a delay between each sentence. But it was worth it to see her mother's face. Her mother was 70 years old now, still living on the frontier colony where Megan had grown up. She had the same brown hair as her daughter, though hers had gone gray. She had the same hard eyes. "I heard what happened," her mother said. "People are talking about it everywhere. A human who threw a Vrethkai to the ground. I did not plan it. He pushed me. I reacted. That is the human way. We do not plan violence. But when violence comes to us, we answer it." Her mother paused. "Do you remember the stories I used to tell you? About our ancestors?" Megan nodded. She remembered sitting by the fire as a child, listening to her mother talk about the people who came before them. The people who had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed millions. The people who had refused to die, no matter how hard the universe tried to kill them. They survived because they did not give up, her mother said. That is what makes us human. We keep going. We endure. No matter how much stronger our enemies are, no matter how hopeless things seem, we do not stop fighting. I know. Then go and show that alien what happens when you push a human too far. On the morning of the challenge, Megan woke before dawn. She dressed in simple clothes, nothing that would restrict her movement. She did not eat breakfast. Her stomach was too tight for food. She walked to the edge of the Rim Canyon alone. The sun was just rising over the horizon, painting the gray sky with streaks of orange and red. The wind was cold, but she barely felt it. Her mind was focused on what was coming. Threxus was already there, waiting at the canyon's edge. Behind him stood dozens of Vrethkai, their yellow eyes watching. Behind Megan, hundreds of humans and other aliens had gathered to witness the fight. Some had traveled from other parts of the colony. Some had come from other settlements on the planet. Word had spread, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Threxus looked at her across the rocky ground. He was not smiling anymore. This was not a game to him. This was revenge. "Are you ready to die?" he asked. Megan stepped forward. She had thought about what she would say at this moment, and she had practiced the words in Threxus's own language. Now she spoke them clearly, so that every Vrethkai present could understand. "Your ancestors are watching, but they will not be proud." Threxus roared with rage and charged. The fight had begun. The news spread through the colony like fire through dry grass. By morning, everyone had heard the story. A human woman had thrown a Vrethkai warrior to the ground with her bare hands. Some people did not believe it. Others were afraid of what it might mean. But everyone was talking about it. Director Samuel Webb called Megan to his office before breakfast. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, and he had been running this colony for 15 years. He had seen many problems come and go, but nothing like this. "The Vrethkai delegation has filed a formal protest," he said. "They want you removed from your position. They want you handed over to them for something they call a traditional challenge of honor. Megan sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. And what did you tell them? I told them no. You are under my authority, not theirs. But this is not going to go away, Megan. Threxus is not the type to forget an insult. I know. Samuel leaned forward. What happened in that tunnel? What were they doing? I do not know yet, but I intend to find out. She left his office and went to find help. Dr. Patricia Holt was the colony's chief geologist, a woman in her 50s who knew more about rocks than anyone Megan had ever met. Kevin Park was a young engineer who had come to Kethra 7 straight out of school. He was quiet and shy, but he was also brilliant with machines. Together, the three of them went back to the tunnel where Megan had found the Vrethkai. The aliens were gone now, but they had left evidence behind. Patricia examined the rock walls, while Kevin set up scanners to analyze what they had been digging for. It did not take long to find the answer. This is bad, Patricia said, her face pale. Very bad. The mineral the Vrethkai had been searching for was called catherium. In small amounts, it was useful for generating power. But in large amounts, and with the right processing, it could be turned into a weapon. A weapon capable of destabilizing the core of a planet. A weapon that could destroy entire worlds. Megan felt cold. Why would they want something like that? We need to find out, Kevin said. They spent the next 2 days gathering evidence. Kevin managed to intercept communications between the Vrethkai on the colony and their government back home. What they found was worse than any of them had imagined. The Vrethkai were planning a war. They saw humanity's rapid expansion across the stars as a threat, and they intended to eliminate it. The catherium weapon was going to be their answer to human colonies, human ships, human worlds. They were going to burn humanity out of the galaxy like a disease. Direct a web called an emergency meeting with the Galactic Commerce Union representatives. The room was filled with beings from a dozen different species, all of them watching as Patricia presented the evidence. The intercepted communications were played for everyone to hear. When it was over, the Vrethkai ambassador rose to his feet. His name was Sethris, and he was older than Threxus, more controlled. But his eyes were just as cold. These communications have been falsified, he said. Humanity is trying to turn the Union against us with lies. The communications are genuine, Kevin said. I can prove it. You can prove nothing. You are a young species, barely a century into space travel. You do not have the technology to intercept our transmissions. Megan stood up. Every eye in the room turned to her. We did not intercept them, she said. We simply picked up what you were broadcasting. Your people were careless because they did not think we were smart enough to listen. That is the problem with thinking you are superior to everyone else. You stopped being careful. Sethris stared at her. This was the human who had defeated Threxus. He had not believed the stories at first, but looking at her now, he was beginning to understand. There was something in her eyes, something hard and old and dangerous. Let me tell you something about my species, Megan continued. We evolved on a world that was trying to kill us every single day. Our sun gave us radiation that causes cancer. Our sun gave us radiation that causes radiation that digeri. Our air was filled with diseases that wiped out millions. Our planet had predators with claws and fangs and poison. And we survived all of it. She stepped forward, and some of the aliens in the room stepped back. Do you know how we survived? We did not have natural weapons like you do. We did not have thick skin or sharp teeth. We had something better. We had endurance. We could chase prey for days without rest. We could keep going long after other animals had given up. We could survive injuries that would kill any other creature on our world. Her voice was quiet now, but everyone was listening. You look at us and you see small, soft creatures. You think we are weak because we do not have claws, but our bones are denser than yours. Our muscles are more efficient under stress. Our tolerance for pain is higher than any species in this room. We are not weak. We simply choose not to show our strength, because when we do show it, we tend to break things." The room was silent. Sethras sat down slowly. He looked at her with new eyes, and for the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never expected to feel toward a human. Respect. "What do you want?" he asked. "We want the mining of Catherium to stop. We want your people to abandon their plans for war. And we want Threxus removed from this colony before he does something that cannot be undone. Threxus will not leave quietly. Then he will not leave quietly. But he will leave." The meeting ended with no resolution. The Vrethkai would not admit to their plans, and the other species were too afraid to take sides. But something had shifted in the room. The way the aliens looked at the humans was different now. There was curiosity where there had been dismissal. There was caution where there had been contempt. That night, Megan sat alone in her quarters and thought about what she had said. She had spoken the truth about humanity, but she had also made a promise. The Vrethkai would not forget her words. They would not forgive her for exposing their plans. War was coming. She could feel it in her bones, and when it came, she would be ready. Threxus was fast. Faster than anything his size had a right to be. He crossed the distance between them in 3 great bounds, his claws extended, his mouth open in a scream of fury. He meant to end this quickly. He meant to tear her apart before she could react. But Megan was not where he expected her to be. She moved to the side at the last moment, letting his claws slice through empty air. As he passed, she drove her elbow into his ribs with all the force she could manage. The impact sent pain shooting up her arm, but she heard the crack of bone beneath his skin. Threxus stumbled, surprise flashing across his face. He turned and swung at her again. This time, she caught his arm, twisted it, and used his momentum to throw him off balance. He crashed to the ground, rolled, and came up snarling. The crowd was silent. They had expected this to be over by now. They had expected to see a human body lying broken on the rocks. Instead, they saw something that did not make sense. They saw a creature half the size of the Vrethkai warrior moving like water, flowing around his attacks, striking back with precision and power. Threxus charged again. And again. Each time, Megan redirected his force, turning his strength against him. Each time, she landed another blow. Her fists connected with his jaw, his stomach, his throat. She was not trying to hurt him. She was trying to wear him down. This was how humans hunted. Not with speed, not with strength, but with patience. They followed their prey for hours, for days, until it was too tired to run anymore. They let their enemies exhaust themselves, and then they struck. Threxus was beginning to understand this. His breathing was heavy now, his movements slower than before. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye where her fist had connected. He had never been in a fight that lasted this long. He had never faced an enemy who refused to fall. "What are you?" he gasped up. Megan did not answer. She circled him slowly, watching for an opening. Her own body was hurting. He had managed to land several blows, his claws opening gashes on her arms and side. Blood soaked through her clothes, warm and wet. But she pushed the pain away. Pain was just information. It told her where she was damaged, but it did not tell her to stop. The Vrethkai watching could not believe what they were seeing. This human should be dead. The wounds she had taken would have incapacitated one of their own warriors. But she kept moving, kept fighting, kept coming. The other species in the crowd were beginning to whisper. They had always thought of humans as a young race, clever, but fragile. They had not known. They had not understood. Now they watched and realized that they had been measuring humanity by the wrong standards. Threxus gathered himself for one final charge. He put everything he had into it, all his strength, all his speed, all his rage. He would not be beaten by prey. He would not be humiliated again. He lunged forward, claws aimed at her heart. Megan did not step aside this time. Instead, she stepped forward into his reach. Her hand shot out and closed around his throat. Threxus froze. Her grip was impossibly strong. He clawed at her arm, tearing through skin and muscle, but she did not let go. He tried to pull away, but her feet were planted on the rock like she was part of the mountain itself. They stood at the edge of the abyss now. The canyon dropped away beside them, black and bottomless. The wind howled up from the depths, cold as death itself. Threxus looked into her eyes and saw something that made his blood run cold. He saw 3 million years of survival. He saw ancestors who had walked across frozen wastelands and burning deserts. He saw a species that had fought its way to the top of the food chain on the deadliest planet in the galaxy. He saw a predator. Megan leaned close to him. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "You should have left us alone." Then she threw him into the darkness. Threxus fell. His roar of defiance echoed off the canyon walls, growing fainter and fainter until it disappeared entirely. The abyss swallowed him whole, and then there was silence. Megan stood at the edge, looking down into the blackness. Her body was trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The wounds on her arms and side were screaming for attention. She could feel herself growing weaker as the blood continued to flow, but she did not fall. She turned to face the crowd. The Vrethkai stood motionless, their yellow eyes wide with shock. Their greatest warrior was gone, defeated by a creature they had called weak. Everything they believed about the universe had just been proven wrong. The humans in the crowd were silent too, but their silence was different. It was the silence of recognition. They looked at Megan and saw themselves. They saw what they were capable of when pushed too far. They saw the truth that the galaxy had never understood. Megan walked away from the canyon edge. She moved slowly, each step careful and measured. Kevin was there waiting for her, along with Patricia and Director Webb and a dozen others. They caught her as her legs finally gave out. "Medical team," someone shouted. "Get the medical team now." Megan felt hands lifting her, carrying her away from the canyon. The sky spun above her, gray and endless. She closed her eyes. The fight was over. She had won. But she knew, even as darkness took her, that this was only the beginning. Megan spent a week in the medical bay, floating in and out of consciousness while the doctors worked to repair the damage to her body. The Vrethkai claws had cut deep, and she had lost more blood than any human should be able to lose and survive. But she did survive, because that was what humans did. When she finally woke, the galaxy had changed. The news of her victory had spread across every world, every station, every ship in known space. People who had never heard of Kethra 7 now knew its name. People who had never thought about humans now talked about them constantly. The video of the fight had been watched billions of times. Everyone had seen the moment when Megan grabbed Threxus by the throat. Everyone had seen him fall into the abyss. The Vrethkai government had gone quiet. Their plans for expansion were quietly abandoned, and their ambassador on Kethra 7 had been replaced. The intercepted communications about their weapon program were leaked to every other species in the Commerce Union. And suddenly no one wanted to be their ally anymore. Director Webb visited Megan in the medical bay every day. He told her about the messages of support that were coming in from human colonies across the galaxy. He told her about the alien diplomats who were requesting meetings with humanity for the first time. He told her that the galaxy was looking at humans differently now. "They are afraid of us," he said. Megan shook her head. "Good. Fear will keep them careful." And being careful will keep us all alive. A week after she woke, Megan received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Sethris, the elder Vrethkai, who had argued against her at the Commerce Union meeting, came to see her alone. He looked older than before, his gray skin hanging loose on his frame. There was something in his eyes that had not been there before. He sat beside her bed and was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. "My people made a terrible mistake," he said. "We looked at humanity and saw what we wanted to see. Small creatures without natural weapons. Soft bodies that bruised easily. We thought you were prey." Megan listened without interrupting. "We did not understand that your softness was a choice," Sethris continued. "We did not understand that you had learned to be gentle because you were too dangerous to be otherwise. Threx has learned that lesson. I wish he had learned it without dying. So do I." Sethris looked at her with surprise. "You do not hate him?" "I hated what he was trying to do. I hated the threat he represented. But hate is exhausting, and I have better things to spend my energy on." The old Vrethkai nodded slowly. "This is what makes your species so frightening. You can kill without hatred. You can destroy without anger. You fight with calculation, not passion. We fight when we have to. We would rather not fight at all. And that," Sethris said, "is what we failed to understand. We saw your restraint and thought it was weakness. We did not realize it was wisdom." He stood to leave, then stopped at the door. "What happens now?" he asked. "What do your people want from us?" Megan considered the question carefully before answering. "We did not come to the stars looking for enemies. We came looking for friends, for partners, for new horizons. We want to trade with you, learn from you, grow alongside you. But if any species insists on treating us as prey, they will learn what Threxus learned. We will not start wars, but we will finish them." Sethris nodded one final time and left. The months that followed brought changes that Megan could never have predicted. The mining operation on Kethra 7 continued under human control, but now other species wanted to be part of it. They sent representatives, scientists, workers. They wanted to understand humans better. They wanted to learn how such a young species had become so formidable. Megan did her best to answer their questions. She told them about Earth, the planet that had shaped humanity into what it was. She told them about the predators and diseases and disasters that had tried to wipe out her ancestors. She told them about the ice ages that had pushed humanity to the edge of extinction and how they had survived anyway. "We are what our planet made us," she said. "But we have also chosen what to do with that inheritance. We could have become conquerors, spreading across the stars and taking whatever we wanted. Instead, we chose to build, to create, to cooperate. Not because we are weak, but because we know what happens when strength is used without wisdom." Kevin Park came to see her one evening, not long after she had returned to her duties. He looked nervous, the way he always did when he had something important to say. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "During the fight, when you grabbed him by the throat, how did you know you could beat him?" Megan thought about the question for a long moment. "I did not know," she finally said. "There was no guarantee. He was bigger than me, stronger than me, faster than me. By any reasonable measure, he should have won." "Then why did you do it?" "Because backing down was not an option. When you run from a predator, you become prey. Sometimes the only way forward is through. Sometimes you have to take the risk, even if you might lose, because the alternative is worse." Kevin nodded slowly. He seemed to understand. That night, Megan stood at the rim of the canyon where she had thrown Threxus into the abyss. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. The wind was cold against her face, but she did not mind. She thought about the Vrethkai warrior falling into the darkness. She thought about the look in his eyes in that final moment, the recognition of what she truly was. She felt no satisfaction. She felt no triumph. She only felt the quiet certainty that had carried her through the fight. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. The word would spread to every corner of known space. Other species would learn that humans were not what they appeared to be. They would learn that beneath the soft skin and gentle smiles was something ancient and dangerous. Something that had survived everything a hostile universe could throw at it. And somewhere out there, in the depths of space, parents of 100 different species were already beginning to whisper new warnings to their children. Do not provoke the humans. They may seem kind. They may seem gentle. But they are the most dangerous predators the galaxy has ever seen. And they are just getting started.